The camera fades in with a dramatic musical swell as the familiar studio lights glide across the set. The host steps into frame with the same calm but piercing presence that viewers of the channel have come to recognize. The energy is already charged, because tonight's story is the kind of political firestorm that ignites every corner of the internet. The host pauses, takes a breath, and speaks directly to the audience as if they are sitting just across from him. Tonight we have something that exploded across social media faster than anyone could have predicted. A moment during a late-night broadcast that sent shockwaves across political circles, comedy circles, and even households that usually do their best to ignore the noise. What happened between JD Vance and Jimmy Kimmel was more than just a television soundbite. It was a flashpoint, a collision between entertainment and political identity that set off a debate reaching far beyond the studio walls. And as soon as the clip hit the internet, the reactions surged like wildfire. The host leans forward, lowering his voice, drawing the audience into the unfolding narrative. Most of us know how unpredictable live television can be. Careers have been made and broken in the span of a few seconds. And on this particular night, a joke that was expected to land like any other punchline turned into something else entirely. It wasn't just a jab or a comedic roast. It was an accusation, a tease of something hidden, something embarrassing, something that, according to Kimmel, JD Vance never wanted anyone to dig into. The story begins earlier in the day, long before the cameras rolled. JD Vance had been touring media outlets, discussing the usual talking points. Policy, family values, the political future of the country. His team had been working overtime to strengthen his public image. They wanted him polished, calm, and unshakable. But as anyone in politics knows, image management is a delicate thing that can crumble instantly under the right pressure. What no one expected was that the pressure would come from Jimmy Kimmel. When the studio audience settled in for the taping, no one knew that the final segment of the show would be the one replayed across social platforms all night long. JD Vance wasn't even a scheduled guest. But he was the subject. And that was enough. Kimmel walked out as he always did, cheerful, mischievous, almost harmless on the surface. But he had that look in his eyes. The one that tells you a comedian has ammunition and is about to use it. The monologue glided through pop culture jokes, celebrity news, and the usual political ribbing. Then he turned toward the camera with a grin that hinted something was coming. A moment later, he dropped a line with Vance's name attached to it and the entire room shifted. He spoke of a supposed secret that Vance had worked very hard to keep invisible, and whether Kimmel was exaggerating for comedic effect or pointing at something real, the impact was immediate. The crowd gasped, the internet caught fire, and before the show even finished airing on television, the clip had already gone viral online. The host of the channel steps deeper into the story. Within minutes, political commentators launched into analysis. Supporters of Vance argued that Kimmel had crossed a line. Critics said late-night hosts have always pushed boundaries. Neutral viewers shrugged, saying it was just another day in American comedy politics. But JD Vance himself was not shrugging. Not even close. According to several people who were close to his team that night, the phone calls began instantly. The frustration was palpable. His staff was scrambling to respond before the segment had even finished circulating. Then, only an hour later, Vance made his first public appearance after the clip dropped. He was no longer the calm, disciplined figure his campaign team had been polishing that week. He was fired up, visibly irritated, and when he finally addressed the comment, he erupted. The host now paints the scene clearly. It happened at a community event where Vance was expected to speak about economic policy. Cameras were already in place. Reporters were already waiting. But instead of beginning with the topic the event had been built around, he launched straight into a fiery rebuttal. His voice was sharp, his gestures forceful. He called Kimmel's joke dishonest, disgraceful, unprofessional. He insisted that the accusation was baseless, fabricated, and intended to humiliate him. He went further, much further. He framed the moment as part of a larger culture war. A conflict between entertainers who mock political figures and public servants who, in his view, are trying to do serious work. He accused Kimmel of using comedy as a weapon. He suggested that the joke crossed ethical lines. He even hinted at legal action, though whether that was a genuine threat or simply a burst of emotion in the heat of the moment, no one knew. And just like that, the narrative grew. Online reactions exploded once again. Memes flooded timelines. Commentators debated whether Vance had overreacted or been deliberately provoked. Some argued that if you step into the political arena, mockery is part of the landscape. Others insisted that comedians have gone too far, turning politics into a circus. Vance's speech became the next viral clip, analyzed frame by pundits and viewers alike. But the story didn't stop there. Hours later, a new wave of discussion surged when Kimmel addressed the controversy on his social media platforms. Instead of backing down, he doubled down with more jokes, saying that if Vance wanted to prove him wrong, he could do it by simply laughing at himself for once. He questioned why Vance reacted so intensely if there was supposedly nothing to hide. The comedian in him knew exactly how to keep the fire burning. The host pauses for a moment, allowing the tension to settle. Now here is where things got interesting. People began digging, searching, asking questions about what the so-called secret might be, even though no one had any concrete evidence. This is the danger of viral moments. Even a joke, even a half-sentence said in passing, can spawn entire conspiracy theories. And once those theories hit the digital space, they grow roots immediately. Some claimed it was about an old college story. Others suspected it involved financial dealings. A few insisted it was something trivial that Kimmel exaggerated for laughs. But with every hour that passed, the mystery grew, and Vance's frustration grew right along with it. The next morning, political shows opened their broadcasts with the clip. They analyzed Vance's body language. They dissected the joke. They debated whether comedians are crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. They debated whether politicians should be thicker-skinned. And in every segment, one line stood out. JD Vance erupts after Jimmy Kimmel exposes his dirty secret on live television. Even though nothing had been confirmed. Even though the accusation had been presented as comedy, not news. It didn't matter. It had become the headline. The host continues, his tone measured but intense. This raises a question that is bigger than Vance or Kimmel. It raises a question about where we draw the boundaries in our national conversations. We live in a time when entertainment, politics, and news are woven together so tightly that it's impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. Politicians appear on comedy shows. Comedians comment on politics. Late-night monologues get treated like investigative reports. And viral clips are more influential than press conferences. In that world, what Kimmel said mattered, even if it was meant as a joke. And how Vance reacted mattered just as much. But let's examine the reaction more deeply. Why did it strike such a nerve? Why was it so explosive? Some people argue that Vance's reaction says more about him than about the joke. That it showed vulnerability, sensitivity, even insecurity. Others argue he was right to defend himself aggressively. That politicians have been taking punches from celebrities for years without fighting back, and maybe it was time someone pushed back harder. Regardless of which side people fall on, the eruption was undeniable. And because it was live, raw, and unscripted, it became the moment that defined the story. After the speech, Vance's team scrambled to shift attention back to policy. They released statements emphasizing his goals and values. They downplayed the controversy. They insisted he didn't want to focus on celebrity drama. But the internet didn't care. Viewers didn't care. The headline was too catchy, too dramatic, and too easy to attach to. Over the next 2 days, pundits invited both sides to discuss the blowout. A few comedians defended Kimmel. A few conservative commentators defended Vance. Some tried to stay neutral, pointing out the absurdity of a nation arguing over a secret no one could even identify. Meanwhile, social media continued producing endless jokes, parodies, and exaggerated theories. The host leans back slightly, speaking with calm conviction. Moments like this reveal the deeper forces at play in American culture. Comedy has always thrived on pointing out hypocrisy, on exposing contradictions. And politics has always thrived on controlling narratives. When those worlds intersect, chaos is guaranteed. Kimmel thrives on chaos. Vance thrives on discipline. The clash between them was almost inevitable. But what surprised everyone was just how quickly Vance lost that discipline. The eruption wasn't just a political reaction. It was emotional, personal, and unfiltered. And because it wasn't polished or rehearsed, people felt like they were seeing something real. Something genuine, whether they liked it or not. And this is what audiences crave now more than ever. Not carefully crafted talking points. Not predictable responses. They want authenticity. They want raw moments. That's why the clip spread. That's why people talked about it all night. That's why we're still talking about it now. The host now transitions toward the aftermath. Eventually, the storm began to calm. Kimmel moved on to other jokes. Vance returned to his political messaging. Reporters shifted to new stories. But even after the moment passed, the debate left behind a deeper impact. It raised questions about vulnerability, media influence, and the power of narrative. It sparked discussions about the role of comedians in political discourse. It exposed how fragile reputations can be in the age of live television. And perhaps most importantly, it revealed something about how quickly modern audiences judge, assume, and react. One sentence from a comedian created a national explosion. One emotional reaction from a politician fed that explosion even further. And all of it happened before anyone even stopped to ask whether the so-called secret existed at all. The host reaches the final stretch of the narrative, letting the words resonate. In the end, the controversy became a symbol of the times we live in. A time where humor can become headline news. Where politicians feel attacked not only by opponents, but by entertainers. Where the boundaries between truth, exaggeration, and satire blur so easily that they can ignite a national debate within minutes. The moment between Jimmy Kimmel and JD Vance reminded the country of something important. That public figures are under constant scrutiny. That the court of public opinion reacts instantly. And that in a world where everything is broadcast, recorded, replayed, and analyzed, even a joke can become a political earthquake. As the lights dim slightly in the studio, the host delivers the closing words with clarity and force. Whatever side you take, whatever you believe about that night, one thing is undeniable. JD Vance erupted, Jimmy Kimmel joked, and the nation watched, reacted, and spiraled into yet another cultural flashpoint. Not because of policy, not because of legislation, but because of a moment. A spark, a sentence on live television that set off a firestorm no one could have predicted. The studio fades out as the music rises, and the story closes with the echo of that viral moment still lingering in the minds of viewers across the country.